And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. This week, MLS dropped their much anticipated roster designation sheets to start the new year. And today, we are going to comb through them and just chat a little bit about what we're most excited for and teams that we think have a lot to gain with their new roster designations. But before we get into that, as you guys know, the Designated Players pod has grown significantly over the last 2 or 3 years. Lots of subscribers, lots of new listeners. We really appreciate you all. Make sure you're continuing to subscribe and do things because we actually now have to go and work with a group of people to keep our accounts in check and balanced and all that good stuff. So actually, because as you know, Connor's not here, he's doing his stuff. So we're actually joined by a very special guest. It is Connor from our accounting department. Connor, how are you? Thanks for being here in spot of Connor,
Oh,
the other
I'm
Connor.
so yes, of course. We are two distinct people. Just to be 100% clear. If you mix us up, I will be upset with you. So make sure it is clear. But yes, taking a break from doing the taxes and the debits and credits, so I can come on here and chat a little bit. I'm a big fan of the league. My favorite team is Minnesota. So shout out Minnesota. Can't wait to talk about the Loons.
And just like that, you're blocked and never invited back because we won't ever have
Immediately off the pod.
Minnesota. Well, we have to
You missed doing
continue.
the solo episodes already.
I do. I really do. We have to go back and continue our series, our new kind of series, because we always do Scar for the Week, and we will still do that. But we do need to go and play our favorite new game. Where is Connor today? Right? So Connor Wright, who is still working, right, or pretending to be an accountant, where is he really? Like, what is he doing with this time off? 2 weeks ago, he was in the safari, taking pictures of rare animals or whatever. Last week, he was hiking in Utah with waiting for our friend Maddie Casey, our guest. Where is he today?
So my little birdies in the CPA factory department have told me that he was caught tandem biking in Vienna. So that's where I've heard he was last.
Man, this guy is a world traveler. Let me tell you, this dude does not take breaks except from the podcast. Well, we're
I
really
heard
happy to.
though,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
heard though, hold on. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I heard that he's not even tandem biking with somebody else. He's riding a tandem bike by himself.
That image is
So
fantastic.
yeah.
Oh man. Well, we're really happy to have you back, Connor, of course, because we were getting bored of my very good takes without your terrible takes to balance them out. So we're really happy to have you back.
That's why I'm
Let's,
here.
yeah, but we
That's why
gotta,
I'm here.
what we gotta do. We gotta dive right into Scarf of the Week. What are you rocking?
I can't remember if I've actually showed this one before or not, but they had a big week 1 win to really stick it to me and prove me wrong. I mean, there's still plenty of season left to go, but they had a big week 1 win after what seemed like a terrible offseason. So a little shout out to the Philadelphia Union out here. Got the not meat in the middle, but does have the crest on the end there. Um, New one. I got this over the Christmas break, and I don't think I've had a chance to show it yet, or I might have. I don't know. I've been in retirement, so I can't remember anything.
Yeah, you haven't shown anything off because you haven't been here for 30 episodes. People are
Well,
gonna
there you
not know.
go.
We're gonna have we have like 100 new followers. Gonna be like, who is this guy?
I
Oh
know.
man.
I'm actually just a guest. I'm not coming back after
Yeah.
this.
We broke out another FCC scarf. I was talking about it during our FCC deep dive that um I don't bring out the non hot dog or wiener dog racing scarves enough from FCC, and I've got a couple of them. So this is one we're bringing out today, and it will go with the theme of our episode, which we should dive into because MLS has been increasing its transparency over the last few windows, and we now get to have a look at every team's both chosen roster building path and the designations for every player on the roster for 2025, which is brilliant. I loved it last year. It really helped you understand how much they could work with and really what they could do. Because every year, before this came out, it was like, my
How
team
are
did,
Miami cheating the system this year?
yeah, yeah, or my team didn't make any moves and they needed to go by five DPs and seven, other players. And it's like we are literally maxed out, and nobody knew because it was always kind of a question mark. So now we get the opportunity to see that, which is awesome. But a few notes here, I just kind of skimmed through. 14 teams have chosen the three designated player model, while 16 teams have chosen the four U22 model, which is basically a 50-50 split, which is great because it gives that second layer of interest to the roster building, right? Which way are you going to go? What players are you going to bring in? How are you going to? It's not the same. Oh, we got to get three designated players. Oh, maybe we have one U22 or three U22. Like we have a very distinct split, and it allows you to dive into different ways of building your team, which we've talked about before as being something we really, really enjoy. Of these teams, only seven of the 30 teams in MLS have filled all of their off-budget slots to this point. Connor, I'm sure you know who they are. Why don't you just tell us who they are?
Oh well, it's got to be Red Bull because they always do. Montreal, another team. I I have never seen a Montreal team without multiple designated players in there. So it's got to be them. Red Bull, not Atlanta. They probably have space for like at least five more DPs, maybe a couple of
Mm.
U22s in there. Miami, I mean, they've probably got a roster full of DPs at this point. Um,
They're setting the new rules.
the Met, I mean, we got the Beckham rules, the Messi rules. I'm sure around the corner.
Yeah, and I'm honestly they'd probably be for the better. But I will tell you, they are Colorado Rapids, FC Dallas, Houston Dynamo, LA Galaxy, LAFC, Miami, and Portland Timbers. So I do want to start off with this group of seven here. Because there's not really a lot to talk about. It's not a lot of fun. They can't do anything more. They are done. They are set. They can sign an off, a TAM player here or there, but really this is the group that they're going to go with. Which group would you say is set up for success, and which group probably should be worried with the roster being stuck the way it is?
I mean, I think LAFC is a very easy one to say that they're set up in a very good shape. I mean, we talk. I think I can't remember exactly. I think both of us had LAFC first in the West, or if not first, definitely top three.
Hmm.
And I think that's clearly because they've built the roster very well. And and I think that's even considering the fact that like I don't think Giroud is going to have a huge impact. Like I think who knows how much he's actually going to be playing. I mean, they have a Bobasi now too. Like that's a lot of striker competition. The Bobasi is clearly plenty capable. I mean, he showed it in week one. So, but I like the obviously like Buwanga's a star. I think Cengiz Under is going to be a good addition as well. And then I'm glad they're bringing in all their U22 initiative slots. Although I feel like I remember giving a bad grade for Smolyakov. So, but I mean, listen, I'd rather them use it than just let it sit there and do nothing. So, at the end of the day, if it's available, go for it. I'm glad they are. I think they're one of the better teams set up out of everybody using all the slots. This is kind of like hypocritical for me to say because I think I know I put them high and I was also probably pretty high when I was making that decision, but on second thought and looking at the list again, not in love with the Houston Dynamo build. I think Ezekiel Ponce, I think will be a good designated player for them. I think Artur is a great player. I'm not a huge fan of Artur as a designated player though. That feels like a little bit too much. Although they can buy that down. And then the U22 initiative spots, I think a couple in there are pretty solid, like Jack McGlynn. I off the top of my head, I don't feel like I had to look into it a little bit more, but Aliu and Quinones as U22s feels. I'd have to look at the stats again. I really don't want to say for sure, but it feels a little ambitious. So and they lost a couple of key players that I think could have taken up spots like Carrasquilla and Hector Herrera. So will be very interesting to see. Every time I bet against Benny Ball, though, I get burned for it, which is why I went with them so high this year. And I really should have thought about it a little bit more. But the roster definitely has like some question marks for me, especially because two of those U22s are also injured right now.
Yeah, dude. Houston in three was quite honestly one of the most ridiculous things you've ever said. And I've done this with you for a
It
long
was not
time.
great.
That's
Listen,
next level insane.
I threw it together very fast. Didn't really think about the fact that Carrasquilla was gone. I knew Hector Herrera was gone, but losing Carrasquilla, I think, is going to be pretty impactful there.
You know what? You know
Plus,
what's
no
funny?
goalkeeper, no Steve Clark.
You know what's funny is the fact that you have put in 0 minutes of research for most of your predictions, and you're probably going to have the best year of predictions you've ever had because that's exactly how you roll.
Our East was almost dead the same. So, like,
Yeah,
you probably spent time researching. I whipped it together and we ended up in the same spot.
which is just par for the course. So,
It goes to show you work smarter, not harder.
It goes to show you just copy whatever I do. I get it. No, for me, I think it splits into two tiers, right? It's the teams that kind of know who they are, they know who their identity is, they know what sort of style they want to play. That's the LA Galaxies, the LAFCs, the Miamis, right? They know for sure who they have is a solid group. They're not worried about their roster build. They know exactly what they want to do. And then you have teams that are maybe not so great without the wiggle room, right? Colorado, Houston, Dallas, Portland. I don't think they're in the best position to leave themselves without wiggle room right now. Portland's defense is still in shambles. I mean, you saw that they dropped four against Vancouver again, right? Was it four? I think it was four. 9 goals over 2 games against
I'm
Vancouver.
pretty sure it was 4.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Then you have Houston, who lost two giant pieces in midfield and replaced them with some U22 players, but unproven, right? You got Dallas, who is still not a team that I'm confident with, even with Luciano Acosta heading into the year. And Colorado's hit or miss, right? I think of the four, Colorado might be the closest to being in the next tier of like, okay, they know who they are. But man, it would be nice for them to move on from Kevin Cabral and just be a designated player who can contribute, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a funny one too, because like when we talked with Omir, like Cabral sounded like a great dude, but like he's just not designated player.
No.
Like he should not be taking up a designated player spot. Like he should be maybe a TAM player or not like any designation. I feel like I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
saying like he shouldn't be on the team, but like just not a DP.
yeah, dude, for sure. Like the issue is that his roster, his impact for what his roster designation is does not match, right? And it was very similar with Dante Van Zier at Red Bull, right? Like people who were not fans of Dante Van Zier were like, this guy's not a designated player. Like he's not bad, but he's not producing at designated player level. And there was, some of the players took offense to it. Some of the fans took offense to it. It was like facts are facts, man. Like the numbers speak for themselves, and he's not doing a good enough job, right? And that's kind of the Cabral feel. Could be a great guy, no doubt, but just doesn't produce at that next level. Speaking of next level, there is the next level of teams, which is teams that only have one spot left, whether it be a designated player or U22, and there are 9 of those teams. It's Charlotte, Chicago, Minnesota, Nashville, New York City, Red Bull, Orlando, Philly, and RSL. Now, what's interesting about this group is that of these 9 teams, only 2 have an active designated player spot open, and that's Real Salt Lake and the mighty, mighty New York Red Bulls. And I think those are the teams that we need to focus on in this group because U22 guys aren't really instant impact guys. Maybe they take a year to get under their feet or develop, or maybe they honestly some of them may spend a year in MLS Next Pro. Like I think that's a stretch, but you never know. With these 2 clubs, though, you're looking at teams that can make instant improvements with literally one signature. So if you're these 2 teams, are there any spots on the pitch that you would focus on as a ball knower of MLS like you are?
Oh man, I feel that. So I was listening to your predictions episode, as everybody should. You were talking about you were like, oh, I was not high on RSL, and then I had the conversation with them, and they convinced me. First of all, I think you're a fraud for that. You should stick to your guns.
Stop it.
But that's beyond the point. I do not like this. I'm sorry to say, I do not like this RSL build. I mean, they definitely needed to change things up. It sounded like I feel like you probably were telling me about this, but they like it seemed like there was some kind of toxicity going on in the locker room at the end of that season, especially because Aranjo just completely fell off the map at the end there. It just feels like a little bit of a mess of whatever they got going on right now. Like they need a bit of a rebuild. It feels like if I was going to pick a spot for a designated player, for me, striker jumps out 100%. Like their striker spot is in dire need at the moment. They did not replace Aranjo right now. I was just pulling up their transfer market list. Like it's 3 17-year-olds, Forster Ajago, Arieth Pyle or Peel.
Peel, oh, that dude's gonna be a baller.
Like, you think so?
Yeah, we'll talk about we'll talk about him.
That's the spot I would go for them. I think they absolutely need a striker. I mean that maybe you got the high hopes for him, but I think he's still pretty young. He's 20. Like I'm not going to expect him to come and burst onto the scene and have like a Kucho type impact. So why not go? You don't need to go get like some 26-year-old striker. Just bring someone in that's a bit older. Give him a year or two to kind of develop, get into things, and really hit the ground running when that guy kind of ages out. The DP you bring in, but that's where I would go with it. That seems like a glaring hole to me.
Yeah, and that's for both groups, by the way, because Red Bull, after watching them in week 1, Red Bull have always had a problem with the 9. They brought in experience. They brought in a bit of talent, but they lost a lot of pace. I mean, Choupo-Moting looks like me when I run. Emil Forsberg's not too far behind him, and then you got Lewis Morgan, who's like, "Am I just supposed to run daggers for 90 minutes? Like, what do you want me to do?" So I think we already have a designated player nine, but I don't think it would hurt us to get another one if this is if this is the build that we're going to use and use it on a little bit of pace. Now, for those of us who are in the know, a certain Timo Werner's name has started been floating around again. And last time this happened, we sat down and we talked about it. Was like, heck yeah, bring him in. Will be a great, great fit. We found him in the 4-2-2 as one of those wide attacking midfielders like Forsberg. He runs the flanks, can shift in, whatever, all that good stuff, right? Now we've gone more to a 3-4-2-1, 3-4-1-2, whatever you'd like to call it. Guess what? I still think Timo Werner fits in that system. Get this man in and let him run at the very top. Honestly, Choupo-Moting playing off him with Emil Forsberg there and then Lewis Morgan out on the wing, no problems at all because they've got the experience and the knowledge to play the game that we want to play while also not struggling for making 17 runs in behind every day. So I'd really like to see Timo Werner there for RSL, but I think they also need a DP9, right? I think they have these pieces around the attack, right? Marschuk, Gonçalves, Luna that are really, really decent, but they are not feeding the top of the diamond, if you will, with any sort of pizzazz, right? So I was really curious. I looked at the transfer market values just as a general guide of some of the players who they brought in at the nine role right now, right? Latte Loth and Denke are between like the 10 to $14 million range. So I was like, all right, let me sneak through and I found some names that I thought would be just interesting to kind of think about, right? You got guys like
Man,
Anthony
this
Mar
man does his research. He was prepared.
this man, you think like I got to this point by myself without being prepared? You left me on an island and I had to survive, and this is where we go. This is how we do. Guys like Anthony Martial, for example, who are just hanging out in Greece right now, right? They are just. I think that would be a pretty easy, enticing uh, move to go for him. Julian Quinones, who was a big, big star in Liga MX, which is something that they are not afraid to do, right? Paging Christian Aranjo from Liga MX, right? I think that would be a really cool one. He's out in Qatar right now. I don't think you're matching Qatari money, but if he doesn't like life over there, I think you get him. If you want to keep recycling the MLS to Liga MX and back train, Georgios Giacomakis is in that range, and we've seen what happens when you bring in a high scoring goal getter from one team and into RSL. He continues that run. Now, I don't think Giacomakis is coming back based off of some of his comments, but there is my favorite one, the most interesting one that I found. Heading into the 2026 World Cup, you might be able to learn American home. And who's an American center forward who also is flexible enough to play in other positions, who hangs out in that kind of market value range, is Haji Wright. Now, I think Haji Wright would be really, really good with players like Diego Luna, Gonçalves, and Marschuk around him. Get just tons of service and finish, 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 finish. Do I think any of those guys are coming? No, of course not. Right? Like those are stretches. But to think, I don't think anybody looked at, Kevin Denke at a $14 million like, oh yeah, he's definitely MLS bound. So it's never out there as a never going to happen. But I'd really, really like to see them go and try and find somebody there.
I'll give you two things on Red Bull, just because I talked about RSL before. One, I think you guys never should have signed Choupo-Moting. I would not want him even as a TAM player, not in this system. You just cannot play the Red Bull system with Forsberg and Choupo-Moting. Neither of those guys are running. And then if you're making Lewis Morgan run, he's running for no reason. Like, you can't press with one person. So I genuinely, I think that was possibly the worst signing of the summer, if not the worst, in my opinion.
Damn.
Besides the fact, I would say I agree with you, but I mean, you guys have a young Polish kid from the second division of Poland.
All right, we're
You
not
know,
we're not we're
you
not
signed him
taking
for a
we're not
reason.
taking shots at Red Bull here. Calm down.
Why not? I
Because
haven't
you
had a
because you
chance
had
for
you
the
had
last couple
30
months.
episodes to do this and you passed on all of them. You missed your shot.
Why would I take Red Bull shots in like the RSL episode? That
It
doesn't
didn't
make any
it didn't
sense.
stop you before.
That's true. Well, because you bring them up all the time, so I'm gonna take my shots while I have them. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but it's like, then why did you bring in Choupo-Moting if you're gonna go sign a striker? Like, what role is he supposed to play then?
Uh,
He's not exactly like some creator in at the 10 spot.
I think it's gonna be one of those things where if you sit him in the tent and be like, hey man, you don't need to run all the time. You can just sit there and play combinations with Morgan and Forsberg and that. Just don't lose the ball. I think he'd be all right for that. And then get into the box for late crosses. I think he'd be fine with that. But I do want to just make a change that Julian Quinones is in Saudi Arabia, not Qatar. My apologies. I looked at the team name was Al Qadish, so I saw Qadish and I was like, oh, or Qadsiya, Al Qadsiya. My apologies. So, but he does have 15 goals and 4 assists in 19 games there. So he's clearly playing at a level that would translate all right over here, even though, the Saudi Pro League's not nearly at our level. But anyways,
They're washed unless you ask Cristiano Ronaldo.
yeah, 40 years old, still
I
running around.
saw
Is
I
like,
saw
yeah,
I saw an
this is a
athletic
good
interview with him.
level. Oh, did you really?
I saw yeah. They did it. He did an interview with somebody in Saudi. And they like, of course, they asked him, they're like, oh, what do you think of, how do you compare the Saudi Pro League to a league like, oh, I don't know, MLS? And he was like, the guy was like, oh, the Saudi League's better, right? And he was like, obviously. Like, oh yeah, like you just conveniently picked the league of your arch nemesis is in, and then just completely not paid to say that. Oh yeah, it's obviously a better league. Yeah, okay, sure.
Poor
I mean, maybe the
Pinaldo.
top like two or three teams or something, but
Yeah, I stopped doing this whole comparison thing because it's always the same thing. You've got half the people who are like, yeah, the majority of our teams can compete with the majority of other teams in any league, but we just can't compete with the tops because they spend, $100 million. And like, well, the tops are all that matters for the people who do that. Like Man United would still blow out, even though they're 13th, they'd blow out any MLS team, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, I'm
yeah,
tired. I'm tired of
obviously.
this. Yeah, I'm tired of this. So I stopped doing that. The one thing I don't want to stop doing is talking about the last group of teams. And the last 15
Yeah.
teams in this group have two or more slots to fill and lots of wiggle room. However, there still is not a ton left in terms of designated player availability. Only Columbus, DC, and Montreal can add one more designated player. Everybody else is filled and only has U22 slots left. I will say DC probably should have 2 spots to fill, but somebody got fleeced in the front office and said, yeah, don't worry, interconference rival, please take one of our best players and we'll pay for him. Don't even worry about it. Whoever let that happen is
Thank you,
insane.
DC. Thank you.
Absurd. Just insanity. But lots of teams, lots of wiggle room. Who do you want to see make the biggest splash before this window closes in mid-April or whenever it closes?
I'm going with the Columbus Crew. I want them to get their number 9 replacement. I saw at one point they were rumored to Bernier, which I think would have been so fire. I would love to see Bernier come back and play in this Columbus team. But absolutely, they should spend that Kucha money. Go get yourselves a replacement. Get somebody up top at that number 9 because this is a championship quality team. They have so much wiggle room too. Like they already have a really good base in place, and you can get another designated player and 3 U22 players. Like go spend the money. Like this is clearly a team that's willing to spend the money. I want to see what they can bring in. I'm excited. They're ambitious, and it's a glaring hole that I think they recognize and they're looking to build upon. So that's my number one to watch. As much as I would like to say Atlanta, I think Columbus has the most wiggle room to like really build up their team.
You said basin place. It rhymes. For me,
I'm a poet.
and you didn't even know it. Ain't that crazy? My
I hate it.
my sorry. For me, I think Columbus is a clear one, right? A designated player and 3 U22s, they can go out and really be aggressive here. And what I say is pull in Atlanta, right? Lose a bunch of players, still bounce back right to the top. And they've got this guy, Wilfred Nancy, who can fit anybody into any system at any given time, which I think is really fun. FC Cincinnati again with their designated players set, they can really not only their designated players are set, but they've also got a really strong group of TAM players, right? They've got a really, really, I mean, if you look at that list, gosh, I mean, half the list is TAM players, right? They are deep in the core of the team is deep, right? Miazga, Robinson, Yedlin, Wobodo, Oriano, Lucas Engel, Papabuca, Barreal, who's on loan. But like a lot of these players were just TAM players. So if you go in and you add even two of the three U22 slots that you have left, you've got one at center back. Go ahead and add a second striker at U22 level and a wide player at U22 level. These guys are going to not only learn from
The
the players in front of
championship
them.
team.
Yeah, not only are they going to learn from the players in front of them, but they're also going to contribute significant minutes. You don't drop, I mean, unless you're Philly, you don't drop a U22 slot to sit him in the MLS Next Pro for 3 years. Cough, cough, Owethu Makanya. Crazy. Still don't believe that. But I also do want to highlight that there are two. I mean, we talk Eastern Conference because it's kind of one of the easier ones for us being on the East Coast. But you've got San Jose and Seattle both who have very strong designated players, a good, strong base of TAM players, and three U22 spots left. Right. And if you're looking at these teams and you're thinking, okay, where am I going to add? Right. Jordan Morris, Albert Rusnak, both getting towards the end. I'm going to need somebody to replace them. Jesus Ferreira could turn into a designated player at some point. You might want to go and look at adding a U22 center back, right? And that's where I think, and that, I don't remember if we had this conversation or somebody else and I had this conversation, but I think the designated players are your attacking force, your 10, your wide players, your striker. I think your U22s are really, really well used in central midfield, center back, or outside back. I think that's a really good place to take maybe what I would call a flyer on those sorts of players who can learn from the like guys in front of them, contribute when they ask for, and then give you a solid base at a low roster cap hit for significant amount of years. So I would love to see a team like San Jose, for example, right? Go in and drop $2 million on a U22 center back to fill in as a rotation player and start getting the feel, the lay of the land in Bruce world, which is very easy to do because he's Bruce. But Seattle, right? You've got Yamar, Kim Keehee at age 35, Jackson Reagan, right? Yamar's 32, 33. Get somebody who can play next to Jackson Reagan for the next 7 years, right? Go find that player who will give you the rock and allow you to do whatever you want in the beginning. Those are teams I'd be watching for, not only because they have the wiggle room to do it, but they also have the roster layout that makes it really interesting for where they add their players.
I think for me, I don't just like I well, first of all, I think teams are doing a lot of what you're saying. It felt like when we were doing the transfer list a lot this year, a lot of the U22 signings were like defensive mids. So
Mm-hmm.
exactly like what you were talking about. Attacking guys were probably already in the designated player spots, use the U22s, bring in some defensive help. I think that makes sense. I agree with you on that. I think Seattle should maybe add like one or two, but keep a little bit of flexibility in the U22 because they have such a good academy. It's a great opportunity to like keep someone like Obed Vargas here and don't let him walk and go somewhere else for somebody else that has a U22 spot. Cause like he's only 19 and he's burst onto the scene really well. He's got a lot of potential, a lot of hype. He's starting to get more and more consistent minutes. He's gonna get the pay he deserves at some point. Keep that U22 spot open for him. Why not? Like, I don't think they should use all three and kind of like trap themselves in that regard. Like they have the academy to develop players. And when they develop and start to shine and make more of an impact in the team, that's a great opportunity to keep them around and make sure they don't go somewhere else and get paid somewhere else. So like San Jose might be a little bit different because I don't think they're as known for their academy. Not that they haven't produced some good academy kids because they obviously have, but I feel like especially with the Bruce system, I would like to see them get like a little bit more depth on the team. Like there's a lot of players there, but I feel like the starting 11 is strong. And then if certain positions go down, I think the quality is going to drop like a decent amount. So I would definitely want to see them like you said, bring in U22s for the center back spot. Doesn't have to be an everyday starter, but they can kind of like get acclimated a little bit. There's not the pressure of being brought in and having to like contribute immediately at a high level. So good opportunity to kind of get settled in, start to like work on your potential, get used to the system. I'd like to see them do that and then use up all the spots. Like I don't necessarily see a situation where a bunch of youngsters are going to burst onto the scene in San Jose, and they need to do something similar to like what I was talking about for Seattle.
Yeah, well, that was my not so deep dive was, who do you have as a breakout player this year? And I'm sitting there and I literally wrote down, I'm like, yeah, I don't think Bruce is chomping at the bit to give 17-year-old Cruz Medina the keys to his very, very rigid 4-2-3-1 system and say, go have fun, Cruz. I don't think that's happening. So I don't see that being a thing. But man, I think that's a really good point about, guys like Obed Vargas, right? And UC Philly was kind of already doing that with Quinn Sullivan. And I think it's a really, really good shout, right? If these players are playing at the potential and it's like, okay, we can either let him go to League MX, that's the only league that seems to be buying our players at this point, or we can hold on to him, pay him what he's worth, and not, lower our salary flexibility. No brainer, right? And I think that's really, really a great shout. And it's something that I'd be really interested to see other teams do, right? Because you got those guys, we talked about that only have maybe one or two. Atlanta United's got two U22 spots, right? And you've got guys like Luke Brennan, like Noah Cobb, a Johnny Fortune who's been playing really well. And this guy who I just watched today who looked really good, Matthew Edwards, he's playing as a right back, looks very, very much like a Brooks Lennon regen in terms of his play style. Very, very attacking, likes to get forward, whip in crosses, right? If he ends up developing to the point of, let's say, again, and this is maybe it's audacious, I don't know, but if he ends up developing to a point like Caleb Wiley, right? If nobody wants to go and buy him on, or they're not meeting your expectations, instead of losing him on a free, sign him to a U22 deal, right? You can pull that there. So I say that hoping that he is U22 and not like 23 years old.
No, I 100% agree, and maybe
He's
maybe that's what they are
22.
doing because I feel
Damn.
like,
But you know what I mean. That's
um,
that's the idea.
yeah, it feels like maybe the teams are doing that because a lot of teams have U22 spots open. Like, there's really not many that all the U22 spots have been used already. I
Yeah, I
mean,
feel
you
like
kind of you touched on it earlier. You mentioned the teams that already have all their stuff like done, but there's plenty of teams that have spots open in that regard.
yeah, and I think what it is really people are at this moment looking for impact, right? They're looking for who can I sign right now who's going to make a big difference. And U22 players usually are not those players, right? So you see that more what I would imagine in the spring window, summer window, right? You're going to get those guys in and say, okay, we're going to give you the half year to develop, and then you'll be ready to play. Andres Gomez comes into mind there. Mars Chuck again now because I'm watching Seattle here on my left screen, but Seattle and RSL I should say. So those sorts of players who came in halfway through the year as a U22 really didn't do much, and you're like, I don't know. Then they blow up for, massive amount of goals and 8-figure transfer moves and all that good stuff. That's stuff that you might look to do. So definitely interested to see what Columbus does, what Cincinnati does. I'm not interested to see what Montreal does because let's be frank here, Montreal is not doing
They're not
anything.
going to do anything.
Would I be interested in what
Yeah,
DC are going to do? No, because it doesn't matter what DC are going to do. They're going to finish 10th anyway. Like, it's just the way the world works. Like, we know how this is going to happen, but it's a really, really exciting time because we still have about a month, maybe a month and a half left in this transfer window before seeing the close and kind of where teams are going to have to stay for the next 3 to 6 months. So, stuff to keep in mind as we move forward. But I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Connor, the accountant, for jumping on with us and having a good little chat about MLS. And you're welcome for not mentioning the game this afternoon as much as I wanted to. You took shots at Red Bull, but I won't. I'm above stuff like that. I won't take shots at your precious little overpaid Atlanta.
I don't. It sounds like you're taking a shot.
Maybe one. But we hope everybody enjoyed it. Like we said at the beginning, please make sure you're doing the subscribing and the liking and watching and sharing and all the good stuff, whether you're on audio or on video. Thanks so much for being here and listening to us. We will, yeah, we'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.